Very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, and welcome to a show this evening with a sense of adventure as we head around South Africa and indeed further north to somewhere in England for our guests on today's show. Now, traveling around on the show is not unusual. Week in, week out, we meet terrific winemakers from different corners of South Africa and beyond, making some extraordinary wine. But today's show is just a little different. I got a message a little while ago from a good friend of mine who runs the busiest WhatsApp group in wine, mostly because he's posting to it every 20 minutes. And I thought it was going to be something related to that group. Instead, it was something entirely different. Together with a good friend of his, he was putting together a remarkable wine adventure. And would I be interested in chatting to him about it? Well, given that the man in question is Daryl Balfour, I most certainly was. Daryl, best known initially as a wildlife photographer and somebody who likes wrestling elephants. But when he's not doing that, he's got an extraordinary collection of wine, which he keeps in some deep underground bunker in an unspecified location near Nelspruit. And he's got a love of wine, an interest in wine, and a knowledge of wine, which combined with his skills as a tour host and operator from around the world, makes him the perfect person to take a wine tour. But he isn't doing it alone, because alongside of him is somebody who I think Daryl used to watch playing cricket when he was growing up, a man who's been on the show before, the South African-born England cricketer Allan Lamb. And the two of them are joining me on the show together, along with a collection of top winemakers, as we have a look at this trip they've got planned for later on in the year and have a bit of a look at some of the delights of traveling around and enjoying South African wine and its associated joys. Before we do that, though, it has been another busy week for wine, so let's have a quick look at the latest headlines. Right, so in your news for this week, just a confirmation, we had some stuff on it on Monday about the Cape Wine auction with MasterCard at Harsendal. Well, the numbers are in, and I had a pretty good guess at it, and I was pretty much on the button. It was 8 million rand, or close enough, that came in from the Cape Wine auction on Saturday night. Some great bids for some beautiful lots, some terrific trips to parts of the world like islands off the coast of Mozambique and Cheetah Plains, the luxury safari lodge up in the Sabi Sands, and that huge lot of 2 tickets to the Rugby World Cup final, 4 nights in Paris for 2 people, and a chance to be at the captain's run, which, fingers crossed, is orchestrated by Sia Kolisi rather than anybody in a different coloured jersey. But well done once again to Raymond and the trustees, to Darielle and her team. A very, very busy week, and congratulations to all of them. Also spent some time a little earlier this week with Gerard Holden and his new releases from Holden Mans. We had quite a lineup led by Miguel Chan from Southern Sun, the Mauritian sommelier extraordinaire, tasting a whole range. I think Gerard's got 17 wines. We talk about a number of estates who are trimming down. Gerard is doing nothing of the sort, but he's enjoying the wine he's making. It's a punchy lot, and a couple of those in particular found great favour with everybody we had over lunch. The new vintage of the Big G, his trademark red blend, and also some of the white grapes coming from outside of France, often, but still coming together really nicely. In particular, the Chardonnay Viognier Chenin blend, which was Chef Ransby Peterson's food at the Old Oak, was very, very good indeed. Now, also at that lunch was Mbali Zondo, who heads up marketing at Norman Goodfellows, and she'll be part of a show next week. I did say we had rather an important announcement to make. We'll make it in full in a special live show next Wednesday from Norman Goodfellows in Fourways. But I can tell you that there's a really exciting partnership on the immediate horizon. There's going to be a lot to look forward to, I hope, as friends, as viewers, as fans, fingers crossed, of Dan Really Likes Wine. And we'll be doing a lot with a great number of our top winemakers and continuing the wonderful friendships we've built up over the, 6.5 going on 7 years of Dan Really Likes Wine so far. So look out for that at about 12 o'clock next Wednesday. A very special 1st of March edition of Dan Really Likes Wine coming up from Norman Goodfellows in Fourways. And if you're in the area, you're very welcome to come along and join us in Delay Graph for a few glasses of wine and that exciting announcement. Right, well, from one exciting announcement to another, and we have our tour guides who are ready to take some very lucky British guests, or perhaps other parts of Europe, pop them on a plane and bring them over to South Africa for what looks like, and I've been through this itinerary, a quite staggering assault on the South African winelands. My chief worry is, will everybody get through this in one piece? Because it's so much to do with so many wonderful, wonderful winemakers. And we've got some of the people involved. So as well as saying a very warm welcome to Daryl Balfour, who is back on the show, and very happily so, and to Allan Lamb, who's just finished his third lunch of the day with Greg Sherwood somewhere in London. None of them included any food whatsoever, and none of them were paid for. Lammy joins us. We also have Emul Ross from Hamilton Russell, who joins us on the show, famed winemaker and another great friend of the show. Peter Allen Finlayson, better known as Peter Finlayson's son, is with us, a former, many years ago, a former South African Winemaker of the Year. Pieter Bubbles Ferreira, GQ's best dressed man in wine for 18 of the last 16 years. And wrapping up an awesome lineup, Nicky Wallace's husband, I forget his name, but he's a lovely guy. Paul Wallace completes a really cool lineup. Guys, welcome to you all, and lovely to have you on the show. And there, in fact, is Nicky herself, adding some much-needed glamour and balance to the show. And a show that is looking ahead to a trip I'm very envious of. I'm going to try and sneak my way onto at least part of it, because, Daryl, you and Lammy, as well as being old mates, have got a real love of travel, a real love of wine, a real love of food. And you've brought this together into something quite special. Give us the initial sketch, Daryl, of how you came up with this idea and what lies in store for people who decide to join you and Lammy for the ultimate South African food and wine safari.
Good evening, Dan. Good evening, everybody. Too many names to mention individually. Actually, this was Lammy's idea, and he met me in January up in Langebaan. We had a very nice, lengthy lunch together, not quite as boozy as Lammy's lunches with Greg Sherwood. But during the lunch, we discussed this, putting together a wine, food, and wildlife safari around South Africa. And unfortunately, the wildlife part of it has had to be detached from the wine and food, because it turns out that not everybody is into wine and food, also likes wildlife. I can't understand that. But Lammy asked me to help put together an itinerary taking in the very best of South African wine. And I think the trip that we have set up, whoever comes on that trip is really going to be meeting the royalty of South African wine.
From day 1 through to day 8, just name check for me very quickly where you're going and who you're drinking wine with, because you've put together a royal collection here.
Day 1 will be starting off with an assault on the Swartland. It's a mini Swartland revolution. Anybody who remembers the old days of the Swartland revolution, we're basically doing an afternoon in the Swartland with all of the luminaries from the Swartland, Eben Sadi, Adi Badenhorst, Saki Mutan, Samantha Suddens, Jasper Veckens, Donovan Roll. I probably left a few out of them out of there. So I guess we'll be arriving from the UK, settling into the hotel in Stellenbosch. We might give them a night to settle down, and then we take them out to the Swartland. And all of those winemakers will be there showing their wines. And we'll finish off that afternoon with a traditional Swartland barbecue.
Swartland Braai, Daryl. I know you're selling this to an English market. It is a Swartland Braai. That word is not allowed to be used on this show. Though you might need to translate it for some of Lammy's guests, because you're going to be bringing a fair number. Lammy, who you will probably know, because in your post-cricket career, when the pads were finally hung up in the early 70s, you have moved into a brand new space, and a very successful one, because every time I catch up with you, you've just returned from a trip to the West Indies or a voyage to the Caribbean. And although a lot of them are centered around cricket, they're very much cricket in the day and an amazing restaurant, a great place to eat and drink. You're very much about embracing the culture of wherever you go. And this seems to just hit that one exactly on the head for you, Lammy, embracing food and wine and coming home to South Africa with a whole pile of mates.
Yeah, Dan. Hi. Evening, everyone. I've been lucky enough. We've sort of met some amazing chefs over the years. And Michelle Roux was just an incredible man. We went on a lot of food tours and wine tours with him. And unfortunately, I was going to bring him over to South Africa to do this, and he passed away, during COVID. So I wanted to do this. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, to come to South Africa and do a food and wine tasting. And then with following Daryl on his wine group, I'm learning so much about South African wines. I thought I'd better meet up with him and let's do something together. So this is how we sort of set up. Plus I do my sporting trips, rugby and cricket around the world, which, we've got the World Cup coming up shortly. And then hopefully we've got the wine trip afterwards. So I think it should be quite a nice year for us.
Lamby, from a UK perspective, what does this say about the strength of South Africa's image as a food and wine destination, and that you, who would normally take people to come to South Africa to watch the British and Irish Lions lose again, or to come over to watch a cricket tour, you're now able to quite comfortably say to them, come and eat, come and drink in South Africa, you're going to have an amazing time, and people are very happy to say, yes, we definitely are. It would suggest to me that there is an enhanced understanding of and appreciation of South African food and wine.
Yeah, I think, through Greg Sherwood and Tim Aiken, I think South African wines have really grown in the UK. They're getting a lot of publicity. And there's some amazing wines, as you know, that are coming into South Africa. And I think the people are loving the South African wines. And I just thought if we do something with, on this wine trip with food, we're going to get a lot of people interested in it. And, and especially coming to meet some of the icons, winemakers, it's going to be fantastic.
Well, let's go into some of those iconic winemakers. And we'll start with the one whose wine I'm actually drinking now. And that is the Black Dog from Paul Wallace. You remember last year we drank this wine as we had a rather special show, actually 11 months ago or thereabouts, in memory of my dear departed dog Stavros, and a number of other winemakers who had some great canine friends over the years. And the Black Dog has been part of my cellar for some time. And you're always a very welcoming host, Paul, as is Nicky, who really runs the operation. How nervous are the two of you, though, that you've got Balfour and Lamb and a group of hooligans from London descending upon you with, I'm sure, a collective thirst of galactic proportion?
I think I'll answer that, Dan. My first glass of wine I shared with Lamby was in the early 1970s. So I haven't got any nerves in my body as far as Lamby is concerned. Daryl is a bit new to me, but he was so welcoming when we met him in Longabon. So we are delighted and really looking forward to seeing them again and also meeting their friends from the UK.
And they're bringing out this collection of Lamby's mates, of people coming to travel. And they're bringing them to areas that we don't always see quite as many of the international tourists. People flood to places like Stellenbosch and to Franschhoek. Elgin is a little more bespoke, I think is a good way of putting it. But I also get the sense that increasingly less, so more and more people are coming. How important, how valuable is it for you guys to have a group like this coming out to experience Elgin and to put an area that's making better and better and better wine more firmly on a slightly more global stage?
Oh, well, you can't come to the South African winelands and give Elgin a skip. Paul told me 35 years ago, Elgin was the best place to grow wine in South Africa. That was, as we were driving through, we were actually heading off on a honeymoon and trying to impress me. He said, well, one day we'll buy a farm there. And lo and behold, we did 16 years later. And, you can't avoid the fact that there is climate change and global warming. And I think Elgin is absolutely perfectly positioned at the moment to produce a plethora of absolute top premium wines. It's very hilly, Elgin, and it's slightly reminiscent of Scotland, hence the Highlands roads and the town of Elgin after town of Elgin in Scotland. And because of those hills, we can put a diversity of wines out there. But what we really would like to introduce to everybody is the absolute premium Chardonnays and Pinot Noirs that are coming out of this cool climate. So I think on the Elgin trip, I'm not sure whether I'm going to be scared of all the Elgin, of all the English visitors, or whether I might party with them, because, I think Paul taught me how to party many years ago. So I'll still decide whether to be responsible, be a mother, or to drink along with them. But we will certainly introduce them to the Chardonnays that are coming out of Elgin, that we feel can hold their very own with the best from Europe and around the world.
Now, we had some conversations about Chardonnay on the show a little earlier on this year, and the Chardonnay of Elgin was spoken of very, very highly, especially after the Chardonnay colloquium, where a number of Elgin Chardonnays shone brightly in comparison to some big name internationals. So Team Lamb, Team Balfour have got some wonderful wine in Elgin and some great hospitality. They've also got some wonderful wine just up the road, but also some terrific food, where at Gabrielskloof, Peter Allan Finlayson is working his magic. It wasn't that long ago that we dropped in, but when we saw you last, Peter Allan, you had a restaurant in Faro that was just getting ready to go, in between working on some new releases and juggling the Gabrielskloof and the Crystalum hats. Give us an update since we were the last there. Is the restaurant up and running, and how are things at Finlayson Junior HQ?
The restaurant is doing incredibly well, very busy. Since we last spoke, they won a star at the Eat Out Awards, which is an incredible and very deserved accolade, and it's going super well. And generally, we're in the middle of harvest at the moment. Most of the Pinot and Chardonnay is in from the Emul area, and on Gabrielskloof side, we are done with most of the whites, and we started today with a Syrah, some Cab, and a few other things. So of the hundreds of things that I've got going on, I think probably about 85% of them are going well.
I think 85% is probably a little on the low side, but we'll take it from there. For people who are having a watch, having a listen and thinking, oh, this tour is starting to sound quite cool, I'd like to inquire, maybe jump onto it. Give people who don't know the Botterfear area, don't know the Peter Allan Finlayson and Gabrielskloof story quite so well, just an idea of what to expect in terms of not just the wine, but the warmth of welcome with which I in particular am extremely familiar.
Well, fortunately, my father-in-law built Gabrielskloof before I was involved, because I probably would have had some very, convinced him to go a lot smaller, and had some poor ideas about how I should build the cellar. But luckily, I wasn't involved when he built it. And it's an incredible, incredible facility. We've got a lovely courtyard. It's always a wonderful surprise when people drive up here and they're not expecting what they find once they enter the Gabrielskloof space. And Botterfear is a fairly small wine region, but we have some incredible producers, including Beaumont, Luddite, Genevieve, to name just a few of them. And it's an area that's increasingly on the map. So Daryl, unfortunately, has said that the group's not coming to Botterfear, but I have to go over, take our wines over to the Emul Ade, and take Faro's food with me over to the Emul Ade. I think he thinks that the group might be a little posh for Botterfear, so that's his plan.
Well, having spent some time in Botterfear, Daryl, I think you might be missing out, because it's a terrific welcome, and not just for the wine. There's some of the finest olive oil in the country as well. But if you are going up to the Emul Ade, you might bump into one of our other guests then, because Emil Ross is on the show at Hamilton Russell. Welcome, El. Lovely to have you back on the show. Probably a good question to ask at least one of our winemakers. We did so on Monday earlier, but before we talk about the tour, give us a quick update. How are things looking harvest-wise for Hamilton Russell?
It's looking good so far. Pinot's looking particularly exciting this year. A nice size crop and very good quality. Chardonnay is about 70% in, looking very good. We're just waiting for a bit of the rain that we had last week to get out of the soil and out of the grapes. But generally, quality has been fantastic. Unfortunately, a very small Chardonnay crop, but good quality. So we'll work with that, and we're lucky so far. The rain wasn't ideal, but all the Pinots in, most of the Chardonnays in, and we're quite excited about what we have. So you'll get to taste all of that in November when you visit.
Well, Chardonnay stock will also be pretty low once this lot have been through and visited all of you. We've spoken, I think, a couple of times with a number of winemakers from the valley about the subtle shift in perception and in how we understand the Himalaya, and moving away from this is South Africa's Burgundy to really focusing on the Himalaya in its own terms. That said, this is a pretty good opportunity, Emul, to take the Chardonnay and the Pinot Noir that really headline the Himalaya offering and present to some guests who've come over from the UK who maybe don't understand just how well we're able to do these two varietals, and albeit in a different style, just how well we can deliver something that for many people, France and Burgundy is the only place they go to.
Yes, I think the Emul has got a very it's a very special place for Chardonnay and Pinot, and even though I think generally the area gets compared to Burgundy more than New Zealand or sort of New World countries, but there's definitely a very unique and very special quality to the wines that we produce here, and it's lovely. I mean, I think all of the producers in the Emul have quite strong markets in the UK, and we always like receiving guests. And I look forward to hosting them at Hamilton Russell. Anthony and Olive will host them at their home after the tasting, and we love receiving guests. It's a good market for us, and it's always special for us to be able to show people what we do and where we are. It adds a bit more to the wine if you can stand in the barrel cellar and see where it all happens.
Now that authenticity is what creates the magnitude of experience, and having again spent some time with you guys as well, the guests, whoever you may be, are in for an almighty treat. You are also, if you're on this trip, going to spend some time with a South African national treasure, because the man who convinced Barack Obama that South African bubbles were the way to go at his inauguration will also be delivering a rather special experience for Daryl and Lamb's guests. Bubbles Ferreira, welcome to the show, as always, in a devastatingly good Italian shirt. I shudder to think what the cost of that would have been, but you can afford that sort of shirt when you're selling bubbles all over the world with such success. What are our guests in store for, Peter, when they arrive and spend some time with you?
When my wife Anne had a nice chat to Daryl, there was only one thing, that we had to really put something together that can show the incredible diversity of Cap Classique in the Cape. So it was definitely very difficult to sort of pinpoint a little position. And, we will be hosting, we don't want to really let the cat out of the bag where we're going to host this special tasting. But we are going to showcase the best Cap Classiques that we have in offer in the Cape to our friends from the UK, and really show them that there is a beautiful category that is growing in the UK market that really can stand and rub shoulders against any other sparkling wine or champagne for that matter. So the diversity is the most important. But, we will have to delve down back into sort of the start of the bubble. So we will have the opportunity to show much younger wines and then showcase the best the Cape Winelands have got to offer in the sense of bubbles.
For the people who are coming out, they're going to have an amazing experience. They're going to meet some great winemakers, drink some superb food, some wine, and drink some great food. Other way around. But they will have the opportunity to do all of this and do create some great people. But the other side of it is that we get to expose some of our South African wine to an international market. And your mention about people getting to drink bubbles is, I think, particularly important at this time, Peter, given the relative shortage of champagne. This is a chance for a group of fairly high-end travelers to get a sense that, hang on, if I'm struggling to get my usual stock of champagne, South African Cap Classique at the top end is offering me not just a brilliant alternative in terms of quality, but one that's a lot less damaging on the pocket.
For sure. There's no question in my mind. We don't want to replace champagne. They're going through the aches and pains. But we want to really showcase that we are the better alternative. Should you not want to do champagne today, and one bottle is not going to break the bank, as you say, but 3 bottles will bring you a party. So we will definitely showcase the best that's on offer, but also then the incredible value that Cap Classique has to showcase.
Just a very quick and unrelated question, Bubbles. Is the statue behind you an angry Buerat? I just want to double check.
He's been growling at me for a while, but he seems to be quiet now. So no, it's not a Buerat.
All right, a reasonable guess. That sense of people coming over investing in South Africa. Lammy, when you do these tours, the kind of people you're bringing out, are these the kind of people who, once they have met all of our winemakers, discovered their wine, they're not just, oh, well, that was nice, I'll take a few selfies and head home? Are they the kind of guys who are both buying wine and investing in wine while they're here, but also going back to Europe and telling their friends, spreading the gospel, ordering more vintages in years going forward, and becoming de facto ambassadors for South African wine?
Yeah, they're all keen wine lovers. They love drinking their wine. So Bubbles, beware. They'll probably be very thirsty by the time they get to you. But we've got them on a serious campaign here. We're not giving them too many days off. So, I said to them, make sure their livers are good by the time they arrive here, and take it easy before they come. But no, I think, we want to really showcase South African wines, and these guys coming over will be spreading the word. And, most of the wines now we can get in the UK, and that's what's the big thing, is saying to the people, they'll all say, oh, can we buy a case? We say, yeah, you can buy a case, and it's cheaper to buy it in the UK, or if you're going to export it yourself. So it's really just trying to get them to taste the fine wines that are getting produced in South Africa. And this is one of the reasons too, is as these people have drunk wines all over the world. So, coming to South Africa, a few people have been with me before and tasted South African wines, but not everyone.
In terms of this list of destinations, I'm sure you and Daryl have spent a long time settling on where you want to go, who you drink wine with. What are you most excited about from this entire list, Lammy?
Well, I think the Swartland. I think that could be a winner or a killer for some of them, because I think they could get wiped out by those hippies down there. So anything can happen. Having been down there in January to go and see them all, it's quite something. I mean, they won't believe what they're seeing down there. I think that's going to be extraordinary eye-opener for them, especially having a look at the vines and the bush vines, and they wonder how they produce grapes. It's going to be quite an eye-opener.
Let's get some local perspective on that part of the trip. Peter, Allan, a lot of your good friends who are going to be out at Ardy's place for one of the opening salvos of this tour. I had a look at the list. Eben is there, Ardy himself. I spoke to Martin Lamprecht earlier, and to Donovan Rall. They're both part of it. Chris and Andrea Molyneux will be part of it. I think Jasper Wickens is part of it as well. It's a serious list of some uber cool winemakers making some remarkable wine. I suspect, Peter Allan, it's the kind of evening you'd be quite happy to sneak a ticket to as well.
Well, any chance I can be close to Ardy and his magnificent beard, I take it. And other than yourself and my dad, he's certainly one of my heroes that I look up to. Daryl I can obviously include on that list of heroes, but Ardy, I don't think he quite gets the credit that he deserves. And apparently he taught Eben Sardi everything he knows as well.
It's going to be a very, very entertaining evening. Is that something that for all of our travelers, they're going to have so much fun exploring an area most of them won't know well at all? Is there still a thrill and excitement for you, Peter Allan, traveling to different parts of South African wine country and meeting new wines, discovering new tastes and vintages, and continuing your own wine adventure?
No, absolutely. I mean, I don't get to do it as often as I used to with young kids and responsibilities. But, there's also new wines popping up all the time. I met with Tim Hillock towards the end of last year. He's a youngish guy who's just started his own brand in the Swartland. And his wines are fantastic, So I think besides getting to meet the legends of the area and tasting, what they're doing, and I think their wines are continually getting better. There's also the newer guys that continue to come up into the scene. And I think it's important that there are fresh faces in the scene and guys pushing the slightly newer, older wave. Just to continue to try and produce best quality wines that we absolutely can. And we all get older, unfortunately. So we need that pressure coming from the bottom.
Well, it's turning lots of diamonds out across our Winelands journey. You're going to be heading up to join Emul, and you're going to be producing some wine there and giving the guys a great day out. There's also an opportunity, Emul, for the guys to spend some time with a winery that's increasingly hitting the headlines, and that would be Restless River. I'm fascinated to know the perspective of somebody just down the road on this wine brand that a decade ago very few people had even heard of, and now not only is it making this extraordinary collection of wine, but there's still people who are shaking their heads when they see the label and go, that's Emul and Cabernet Sauvignon, that must be wrong, something's wrong there. It's a wonderful story that has broken so many rules, but very happily so.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a big fan of Craig and Hans cabs. It's also nice. It allows us to see fruit being harvested in May in the Emul, which is it says a lot about their character. I think I haven't seen them, but I think it must be quite impressive hanging fruit that long. They're beautiful wines. I believe Craig's planted quite a bit more of it. So it's a bright future for them with cab. It's definitely something that does well there, and let's see. There's many years ahead, and the wines are exciting. Craig's going to build a 500-ton cellar soon, he says. But no, it's great stuff, and definitely get your hands on a bottle if you're in the area.
Well, he's doing a great job for someone who's part-time in wine when he's not surfing. And I think back in full health for now. Breaking legs. He and I had a similar time in hospital. He's one from your area. Tell me about one other who I see is on the list for Daryl and Lambby's trip. And that's another wonderful success story from the Valley, who I think has just planted her first vines on her own land. And that's Barine Sauls, who you, of course, will know very well.
Yes. Barine has, she bought a little piece of land in Tesarsdal, just outside of Tesarsdal a couple of years ago. Against all odds, everyone said to her, nothing will grow there. She had all sorts of horrible names for the farm, and she planted an experimental 50 vines on various sites on that property, and some of them have taken incredibly well. So she is planting a hectare proper sort of vineyard this year. The biggest challenge is going to be, I think, keeping the rabbits out. There's a squad that as soon as anything buds, they just eat everything off. So they've got chicken wire around the vines and all sorts of things, but looking very positive, and it's super exciting. I can't wait to see those vines grow and hopefully get some fruit off them in the next couple of years.
It really is a terrific story. And if you're on the trip, you're going to get to meet Barine and hear the story of how a forklift truck driver in a warehouse has become one of the most exciting winemakers in South Africa. The list of winemakers continues, and Bubbles, I know you're going to be directing traffic on one particular day, but you, like the rest of us, I think, will probably be tempted to try and tag along on another day or two, because there are a few of your other good friends and people who I know you hold in very high esteem. Just looking through that list, a day out at Taibosch with Skulk Willem Joubert, the GQ model who makes some wine occasionally, and Ken Forrester, the king of Chenin Blanc. This is a trip that really is giving everybody who's taking it the very best of South African winemaking.
And I really believe, it's great to see specific areas, but as soon as you get the esteemed winemakers, and I've seen the list, it's really incredible. I think this is it's a journey in a lifetime, and to meet not only characters but people that really has vested interest in specific varietals, whether they are specialists or producing a beautiful array of wines. The stories will be endless, and I really, see it's going to be a very tough task from Daryl and Lamby to Allan to really stick to the itinerary, because they are going to not only cover ground, but they have to meet so many new and interesting stories that really tells our stories of wine.
And they're also meeting people who cross over a few generations. In Ken and Schalk Willem, who we've just mentioned, guys have been around for a fair amount of time. You are a South African icon, but you get guys like Peter Allen, like Emul. I'm having a look at the list. Duncan Savage is part of that list, amongst others. It's an introduction for the guests taking this tour in November from Europe to new generations of winemakers, building on our incredible heritage and history, but introducing new interpretations, playing around with new varietals, and taking an already successful industry into new and exciting territory.
I fully agree. You've hit the nail on the head. It's like Allan said, we have to believe in the bottom coming up. We might leave legacies as it goes along, but as long as I can celebrate with my feet hitting the ground every morning, there's no reason for me not to be at nursery school. So, we'll keep the younger guys honest, but we'll take them under our wings and grow them. I have so much respect for everybody that's part of this conversation, and the list just continues. So it's a very proud moment indeed.
Let me jump over to our team in Elgin and to the Wallaces. And Paul, an estate that I know we've all watched closely in the last year, because there's been some change, and I think really exciting change in terms of the management, and people are going to be able to see the new man at the helm. Vergeleken, one of our really historic estates that's contributed so much to the South African wine story over the years. Luca Cunningham, he's bid farewell to Glenelly. He's moved over to the other side of town and is set up, and I think now quite well established in the sense of here, yes, it's a new winemaker, but in Vergeleken, a real opportunity for Daryl and for Lamby to introduce all of these guests, so these future South African wine ambassadors, to an estate that has got so many stories to tell in terms of where we've come from as a South African wine producing nation.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I think Luke's going to do a great job at Vergeleken, and I wish him well. I just want to say to Lamby and Daryl about his team, remember, you're on a marathon. It's not a sprint. You guys are starting in the Swartland. You're coming from a English winter. It's going to be hot, and we look forward to, once you have really got hot, to entertain you in cool climate Elgin. And you'll see our wines are totally different to what you're going to start off with.
And it's that diversity, it's that variety of South African wine that is going to hit home for so many people who I suspect almost all of them will come away from this trip going, I can't believe there is so much to South African wine, and not just we've tasted 25 different varietals or versions thereof, but we've had a Chenin here and a Chenin there, and they're so different. We've had a cab here and a cab there. They've been worlds apart. And that, Paul and Nicky, you guys have got a particular style, a particular interpretation that even within Elgin itself can be different in different parts of Elgin. And that's a real joy of South African wine.
Absolutely. We're going to introduce you to Chardonnays that come from Table Mountain sandstone, Chardonnays that are made from our more robust Glen Rosa soils. We'll have some of the young and up-and-coming winemakers, old Jacques Duplessis from Oak Valley. We'll have young Bobby Wallace, who's putting his print on the Paul Wallace wines. We'll have some of the manna like Andries Berger and from Paul Kluver, and Werner Muller from Iona. and Joris, whose wines are beautifully precise and bounce on their toes, just like Joris does. Joris from Van Almenkerk. So yes, take heed, pace yourselves, don't get bowled out.
Well, they've got two fine captains of this team, and as we come towards the end of the show, let me return to our two captains. Daryl, you've put this together very carefully, and your experience is not just the fact that you've taken tours all over the world, and I watch very enviously when you take these travels and you're off to South America, you're venturing into the heart of Africa. You've certainly got that expertise, but you also do your own trip every year, and we've had you discussing your wine pilgrimage on the show in the past. This is a part of the world you know really well. You've spent a lot of time curating what to me is not just a wonderful postcard of the South African wine world, but also one that in a relatively short space of time speaks to as much variety of both style and terroir as you could possibly fit in to such a short space of time.
Yeah, Dan, I think what makes this trip special is that our guests are going to be tasting with the winemakers. They're not going to be having the standard tasting room experience. They're going to be going back of house. They're going to be sitting down, socializing, tasting with the winemakers, talking to them, socializing with them, eating meals with them. And one thing we haven't touched on is we're going to be eating at some of the finest restaurateurs in the Cape as well. We're going to be eating with Liam Tomlinson at Chef's Warehouse Maison in Franschhoek. We'll be with Bertus Besson in Stellenbosch. We're going to be eating Peter Allen's Faro, even though he actually opted to bring it to Restless River because I think it's closer to the surf. In November, Peter Allen's not on the farm; he's out in the surf all day. So I think it was easier for him to go up the Emul and Otter than back to Krabberskloof.
I suspect you are very right in terms of that analysis. Difficult question for you. I shall ask it nonetheless. You've got an incredible selection of opportunities over the 10 days or so that people will be indulging themselves in the best of food and wine in the Western Cape. What's the one you are most relishing?
Wow, it's hard to choose favorites, but I'm really looking forward to the Elgin Chardonnay Day, the Restless River, the Emul and Otter Valley with Hamilton Russell's Restless River and Peter Allen. We haven't mentioned Ian Nordie. I mean, he's one of the godfathers of South African wine, and we're going to be tasting his rains with him and enjoying a food and wine tasting with Bertus Besson. So, Ian is always very entertaining, and hopefully brings Enzo along. And it's hard to choose a favorite because every one of them is going to be special.
They are indeed. Let's jump over to cricketer turned wine and food aficionado Allan Lamb and get a final word on this trip. Lammy, if people are interested in taking part in this, and we do have a very loyal and dedicated following, particularly in the UK, what are the exact dates? And if people want to take part, how do they get in touch? How can they be part of this adventure?
Dan, it's sort of, they can get a hold of me, but I think a majority of the spaces are going very quickly. We just had a friend of mine from Canada just book, and he's very excited to come over. And, but as Daryl says, this is not all sitting down and it's like walking around tasting the wines. It's very sort of low key and enjoying what you're doing. And I think that's what it's all about. It's not bringing wine buyers over to taste their wine. So I think what Daryl's saying is great. Just going back to the Swartland, Ardie Badenhorst, it was amazing because Ardie's dad was head boy at Wynberg, and both Badenhorst sons went through Wynberg, but they were a lot younger than me, so I missed them. But he was head boy at Wynberg when my brother was there. So we're talking quite some time ago, but I think I was still in junior school trying to get into senior school when Andre Badenhorst was head boy. Going back to Paul and Nicky, lovely to see you guys again. I haven't seen Paul for ages, from Bishop's Day, played cricket together and whatever. Taking a lovely sort of family hospitality, and I think this is what it is. A lot of people, it's like people opening their homes up for us, and I think that's what makes it so special. You know, it's just not any old tour. It's a very special tour. But I thought, Nicky and Paul, I've got a Chavaro here, a very Italian, one of my best Chardonnays I drink. So I'm looking forward to tasting your Chardonnays. I hope they're better than this one.
I suspect it'll be one of many great comparisons and many great contests over the course of an extraordinary 10 days. Guys, it looks like a terrific trip. I'm going to accidentally change my diary to ensure I'm somewhere in the vicinity for at least a couple of those days, because it looks like tremendously good fun. Thank you for sharing the details of the adventure and for putting it all together. And to Daryl and Lamby, yes, it's going to be lots of fun. Yes, I'm sure there's a business element to it, but bringing so many people over to South Africa to try our wine, try our food, and to celebrate what we have to offer is really, really important to us all. So thank you to you, and thank you to our collection of winemakers for joining a very special edition of Dan Really Likes Wine. They'll bring you all back up and say thank you and goodbye to all of you. But here we are, our guests for this evening, and a wonderful collection. Pieter Ferreira, Daryl Balfour, Paul Wallace, Allan Lamb, Emul Roth, and Peter Finlayson's son. Guys, thank you all very much. Good luck for November, and hopefully we'll see you down on part of the trip.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in
Thank
November.
you very much.
Cheers,
guys.
guys.
Thank you.
Everybody, cheers.
Cheers.
Great program.
There we go. A wonderful collection of South African wine personalities. We'll claim Lamby. Yes, he's got that dreadful English accent, but he's still Weinberg at heart. And we did this show simply because I love the fact that more and more people are coming from around the world, and despite the challenges of which we have a few in South Africa, they're coming to drink our wine, eat our food, support our economy, and embrace just what South Africa has to offer in this wonderful, wonderful space. That wraps us up for today. A reminder, if you are in the Fourways area, come and join us between 11 and 3 o'clock next Wednesday at Norman Goodfellows for a celebration of a very, very important announcement. And if you're watching the show on Monday, it will be coming to you from Thaibosch down in Stellenbosch. Allan, I think it was Peter Allan was mentioning, no, it was Pieter Ferreira, was mentioning Skulk Willem Joubert earlier in the show. Well, Skulk Willem and his team are hosting me for a couple of days, and I'll be down there checking in on the harvest, drinking some great wine, and celebrating the Otto family adventure. That does it for this evening. I've got some Black Dog Malbec from Paul Wallace Wines to finish off with my wife. I suspect, much like a dinner with Allan Lamb, will drink most of it, and I shall be left wishing for a little more. Have a great evening. See you on Monday. Goodbye.